About this time, something terrible took place in Hamburg. Avraham Metz moved to Hamburg to marry my cousin Sarah. One day, Avraham disappeared. Sarah went asking at the homes of her friends if Avraham had stayed the night. "Have you seen Avraham?" Sarah did not know if her husband was alive or dead. 3 years later, a similar turn of events occurred to Aaron ben Moses, an honest man, providing for his wife and 4 children. One evening, the wife of Reb Aaron waited till long after dark for her husband to return. She ran out in search of him. Alas, he was deemed as missing. Word of Reb Aaron's disappearance spread like wildfire. The next day, a man named Lipman suspected that the innkeeper might have been involved. When Reb Lipman arrived home, he told his wife about his theory. The wife, Rivka, was a passionate one. She insisted it must have been the innkeeper who killed Reb Aaron and Avraham Metz before him, but no one came with anything to tell. And so the 2 widows continued in their anguish. One Shabbat morning, Rivka could not sleep. She vowed that the crime be avenged. At dawn, she spotted the innkeeper, his wife, and a porter carrying a large chest. She was sure that the dead body was hidden in the chest. Rivka ran to the city mayor and told him everything. The mayor warned her that if she could not prove it, she would forfeit all her property, and there would be serious repercussions against the Jewish community. The mayor sent soldiers to bring in the suspects and inspect the chest. And what happened next? Well, you'll have to find out by reading Glikl by Mat and Julie Tonti, a husband and wife team who are turning the diaries of Glikl Bas Leib from almost 400 years ago into a graphic novel. The disappearance of these 2 Jewish men is a real story, corroborated by other sources. The full story and what happened to them is all available online at their new website, Glikl.com. That's spelled Glikl.com. It's one of the chapters from the forthcoming book. I caught up with Mat and Julie to tell me more. The reason I'm having you on is to talk about Glikl of Hamelin, who was a Jewish woman in the late Middle Ages. And
the early modern ages.
And we're going to talk about that. And you're creating a graphic novel based on her diaries. And I want to know all about what life was like for a Jewish woman, Jewish families of this era, and your trip to Germany, where you actually saw where she lived and learned about the Jewish community there. Mat and Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bud. We read her book for the first time over a decade ago, and it was just very relatable as a mother, as a Jewish person. And I was trying to teach her story to my students, 13, 14-year-old students, middle school students. And they just kind of were totally disconnected. The language felt archaic. And so Mat, on a whim, just drew one of the stories from the book. And I looked at it, I said, oh my gosh, this is really good. We have to keep doing this. And so we have. It's been about 5 years. He's been drawing away.
And the kids can relate to a graphic novel maybe easier than a translation of a diary from several hundred years ago.
Yeah, I mean, the visuals, we have to truncate her language. It's just much more engaging.
And what did the 2 of you do professionally?
So we're both educators. I'm a musician and a rabbi and an educator at a day school.
I'm an educator at a Jewish federation. I also teach yoga, and I have a little pottery business. So we're artists.
Artists and teachers. There you go.
And you actually went to Germany.
Yeah, that was a really cool experience because visually we needed to understand what her life looked like, what it felt like, just kind of those aesthetic touches. While we were there, we met one of the coolest people, our tour guide, Andreas. And not only did he show us what we needed, he needed to show us, but he's still been a reference for us if we're trying to understand what did they wear, probably when they went to, a fancy wedding. He'll kind of help us find these references. So he's been continuing to support us and our project.
The coolest thing he showed us was the graveyard. Glikl is not buried there. She's buried in Metz, France, because she remarried. But he showed us the graveyard where Glikl's husband is, where Glikl's parents are buried, where some of Glikl's children are buried. So it's amazing to see that, Hamburg was bombed and destroyed during World War II. And the only thing, and it was occupied by Nazis, and the only thing that really survived in the Jewish community was this graveyard.
That's like physical evidence.
Yeah. And so we put all those references in the book. I want people who really know their history to really feel like they're in 17th century Hamburg, Germany. I just have to say something. You introduced her as Glikl of Hamelin, which is how she is, her moniker on many of the books. But we're changing that to Glikl of Hamburg because her husband, Chaim, was from Hamelin. And the truth is they spent a year of their life together in Hamelin, but that was it. So really, she's Glikl of Hamburg.
Now, who was this woman and what year did she approximately live?
So she was born in 1646 in Hamburg, Germany. It wasn't Germany at the time, but Hamburg. And then she died in 1724 in Metz, France. She lived, a nice long life. She had 12 children that lived to adulthood, 2 that died in early infancy.
So she had 14 children?
14 children total. Right.
I'm just trying to juxtapose that with families of today.
Right.
Right. Well, she got married at age 14.
She had her first baby at 15 or 16.
And was this typical of a Jewish woman or any woman of that era?
Yeah, I think it was pretty normal to get married quite young.
And they didn't live as long.
And to have 14 children?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting. So like the life expectancy, it was a lot lower, probably about 40 years old. But 40 years old is like an average because a lot of people died very young. But some people, she lived into her 80s, which is phenomenal. Her grandmother also lived a nice long life. We're not sure about her mother. She doesn't say.
Now, when I think about the Middle Ages and Jewish people, I think about the Black Plague and knights and anti-Semitism, especially in Germany. But I guess what you're saying is it was kind of the end of the Middle Ages?
So according to the scholars, what marks what was called the early modern period is the fact that the printing press is now readily available. There's multiple printing shops in every town, which means that there's a lot more literature, which means there's a lot more news. It was essentially the first internet. Before that, people were just writing by hand. There were scribes who were copying books. And so now there's all this literature. Ideas are being spread more quickly. The map making industry is huge. People are making maps and exploring to quote unquote the new world. And business and trade are able to go further because of all this communication. But you need reliable ways because there was no common currency from region to region. You needed networks of people, aka Jewish traders, who had relations in multiple countries to create this network of trade, which would allow someone from like Amsterdam to trade to somewhere in Poland, which to us seems that's a pretty short distance. But back in that day, you had to like have someone reliable enough to make those interactions. While there was definitely a large amount of Jew hatred, they weren't allowed to be part of any sort of guild.
I was just thinking as you guys were talking, I guess Glikl of Hamelin or Glikl of Hamburg, she was literate. If she wrote a diary, what language did she write in, first of all?
She wrote in Old Yiddish, but you're right. She probably spoke, many different languages, I'm assuming. She didn't speak French, though, because when
Oh, that's right.
she died in France, she couldn't really communicate with the family of her second husband. But yeah, she was definitely literate. She wrote as a way to deal with her grief after her husband died. So that's when she starts keeping the diary. But you're right. She, had the time to write. She was a more, wealthy Jewish woman. And so, I assume that, she had a very good education. Her father educated the girls in the family just as much as the boys. She writes about that.
And she's always quoting Mishnah and Gemara and all sorts of psukim. We don't know if she actually learned them or if they were like more in common nomenclature, that she knew these phrases. But she definitely had a solid education.
And what did she do for a living?
So she was a merchant and a trader. She dabbled. She did some exchanges, some money changing. They sold jewels.
She kept fabrics for a while.
A variety of things. It's in our day and age, it's hard to understand because people, are very specific in what they do. But it just seems like she sold a variety of things just kind of based upon the market and based upon what was available.
She talks about running a brisk business for the acquisition of wealth. But really that wealth was just to support her family. She also talks about how like money is a mirage. Don't get stuck on it. You really see like she's clear that she is there to support her family, to make sure that her kids are married off, and to give tzedakah. She was very pious.
It was a very difficult life. And, you needed money to marry off your children. Money was kind of the only security they had. There's a lot of bribing of officials that also had to happen. The Jewish community, people would be jailed for certain things. Sometimes it would be unjust. And so they would have to free people as a community.
Also, there was no banks for them to rely on. We think of our family as our family and then banks as this institution where we keep our money. But they had no banks. So they just relied on family. So, and every interaction was like a make it or break it interaction. She would have to invest a lot in order to make a lot. But if one thing went wrong, she tells several tales of one shipment of whatever her stock was went missing and she took a huge loss. It was never the sense of like, oh, you have money and therefore you have money. It's like, felt very much like they're living on the edge all the time.
How do you see the Jewish community based on her writings? Did it dispel any myths?
I think it's almost like today. It's complex. People are not one-sided. There's a lot of different opinions.
So she talks about, first of all, when she was in Hamburg, there was the Sephardic community and the Ashkenazi community. And so at one point, the Ashkenazim are kicked out of Hamburg, but the Sephardim are not because they're much richer at that point. And so it's not like all Jews were treated the same either. But she also talks about who's going to be the head rabbi, a dispute in the community, all the like logistics, all the kind of politics that you hear about, this shul splitting off from each other.
That sounds like today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think a lot of it is just human behavior. But it is interesting, like, we think about like, oh, Jews, but like the Sephardim and Ashkenazim were treated very differently, and they were two very different communities.
She also lived through the time of Shabbatai Tzvi.
Oh, yeah.
So she talks about her father-in-law packing barrels of foods and goods to ship off to the Holy Land and move there because the Messiah has come. They're just kind of waiting for more instruction. She's really not fazed by that, but she kind of sees how people get really excited about that. And she's really not into drama. She kind of like states it, but she doesn't get wrapped up in it. She's like, yep, this is happening. And then this is how it ended. She's a no nonsense kind of woman.
Yeah.
How did you decide what to illustrate? Are there stories that struck you?
She tells a lot of stories, and they're very wordy. She repeats herself a lot. So I think one of the challenges with doing a graphic novel is like you can't just put the same amount of words because it's too many words, and you can't put all the stories. So we went through the book, and there's 7 chapters. She calls them books, 7 books. So we kind of went for the stories that painted a picture of her life and that had the most emotional impact on the reader. It will definitely not be a complete version of the book word for word, but I really feel in choosing the stories, you'll see the scope of her life philosophy, her family relations. You'll really get a portrait of her.
The previous editions of her journals, she was called Glikl of Hamelin. So that's like the Pied Piper of Hamelin?
Same, yeah. So, all right, so we went to Hamelin. When we were there, we went to Hamburg. And then we went to Hanover, which is a town between Hamburg and Hamelin, where her family lived. And then we spent, I don't know, like an afternoon in Hamelin.
Yeah, Hamelin was really cute because the whole town, they kind of capitalize on the Pied Piper. So there's these little like rat statues everywhere. And there's this guy doing a whole like Pied Piper tour.
All playing a clarinet.
It's very cute, but you could definitely see, I could see when we were there why she didn't like it. I mean, it was a walled medieval town, Hamelin. It was on a river, which was beautiful, but I could see it being slightly claustrophobic. You're out more in the middle of nowhere. It's just a small town. It doesn't offer as much. She really loved the big city of Hamburg. Hamburg also, is on rivers, on the sea, but it just attracted a lot more international.
Yeah, it was, Hamburg was the port city. Like so many different people from different places were coming through Hamburg. So it really was an international port of the time. And right. And she talks about Hamelin being just like a slow, sleepy backwater town.
How did you feel being Jewish people touring around Germany or Jewish Americans?
We got yelled at in German a few times. It didn't feel like it was the Gestapo.
We didn't know all the rules. It's a very kind of meter society. I mean, thank God, Germany is a very beautiful country, culturally. I mean, I just want to focus on the positives of the Jews have contributed so much to Germany, to that region. You can see it, you can feel it, and there's definitely a difficult past. Obviously, World War II and the Holocaust is the lowest point ever, but I would say for the most part, everyday life, the relations are okay.
Currently or back then?
Yeah, even back then.
Yeah.
I mean, Glikl had non-Jewish people in her life that, just like anything, there's Jews that you like, Jews that you didn't like, non-Jews that you like, non-Jews that you didn't like.
Yeah.
She does talk about there was some anti-Semitism kind of from what she calls the riffraff. Certain classes of people just were very anti-Jewish.
This is interesting. She mentions a relation. She has a lot of family spread all around. So one guy tried to settle in a town where there was a university. And she was like, but it is well known that the universities are not friendly to Jews. So he had to leave.
Well, that's interesting because maybe the riffraff are the people that hold negative opinions about Jews, but maybe the well-educated university people are the ones that hold low opinions about Jews.
Something like that, right. Yeah, it was clear that they were important to society, but that they were not integral to the fabric of, at least on a professional level.
And you've previously printed a graphic novel, The Book of Secrets, which is a collection of Hasidic tales.
Yeah.
You're coming out with your second graphic novel.
Yeah.
His first novel, it's more towards kids, probably upper elementary, middle school age, and kids love it.
The first book was really to expose kids to the depths of Jewish stories that maybe they didn't know was there. Because I try to find the deepest stories I can find, Rabbi Nachman's stories, Baal Shem Tov, from all different places. But Glikl is definitely a much more for a mature audience, just because she talks about losing her babies. There's murder. I mean, I realize kids are exposed to that these days, but it definitely is it's a story of a woman's life.
Well, I think what both of these books also have in common, one is more stories, midrash, fantasy. Glikl is just the historical novel based on what she wrote. Something that we're both trying to do, and definitely with both of the books, is reclaiming or connecting with history. My mom came in 1956, and it's just what came before? There was always this kind of feeling of being cut off, like spiritual orphanhood, of not having deeper ancestors informing our lives. And so I think both of the books are filling in that gap between what was before and who we are now, to give us a little bit more of a roadmap, a little bit more of a context for who we are.
Mat Tonti and Julie Tonti, and the forthcoming book is going to be called Glikl of Hamburg.
Something like that. It'll have Glikl in the title, yes.
To be announced when it's ready. And for more information, you have a website?
We are right now doing Indiegogo campaign to gain support, to grow numbers of our audience, help support the project.
Glikl.com.
Yeah, if you go to Glikl.com, that's where the website is, and you can
Glikl.
Glikl.com. And so, right, there's links, and you can go to the Indiegogo. You can go. We have Instagram. We've been doing posts on Instagram. We have an email list. We know that there's a lot of Glikl fans out there. We just met someone recently who named her daughter Glikl. Her daughter's middle name is Glikl. People who know Glikl and are connected to Glikl are deeply connected. But we're trying to kind of create the Glikl verse. get all these people to come together. There's a lot to be learned there, to kind of create community around it. So this is our way of bringing Glikl's voice.
Mat and Julie, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Ben.
This has been a moment in Jewish history. I'm your host, Ben Bresky, and for questions or comments and past shows, you can check out benbresky.substack.com, where you can like, subscribe for free, and donate. Thank you to all the listeners, and shalom.